So going back to After Effects, I will talk you through step by step how to create this, although I won't be covering the basics of After Effects, so you will need a basic understanding of the program to follow along. But, hopefully by the end of this we can create something that, looks fairly successful. So without further ado, let's begin. Okay, so the first thing we'll do once we've loaded up After Effects is we'll create a new composition, and we'll call it something like Realistic Fire. To do that, you just go Composition, New Composition, and we just choose HDTV 1080p 25 frames, make the composition 15 frames long, give it a name. Then we'll import some files, some TIFF images that we're going to use. They're basically particle sprites, which we're going to use to create our custom particle system. So those will be included in a download link, which you can find in the description of this video. So just go ahead and download those, right click, import them into our project window here, and you're ready to follow along. Okay then, so we'll start by creating a new solid, give it a name, and we'll go, let's do that again, right click, effect, Trapcode Particular, and this is going to form the basis for our particle system. Before we begin to manipulate the values, we want to give ourselves as much control as possible from the beginning. So we'll create a null object, and we'll call this locator. We'll use this to control the position that our particles emit from, rather than manipulating the values in here. So we'll do that straight away. We'll bring up the emitter properties, and we'll click on our locator. And first thing we'll do is we'll make it a 3D object by clicking this checkbox here. Press P to bring up the position, and it's quite simple. We'll simply Alt left click on the position XY, left click the pick whip tool, drag it onto the position. We'll do this again for the Z position, except this time we'll just drag it to the value here, the Z value. So once we've done that, we will now be able to control where our particles emit from using the null object. We can also go ahead and create a camera, a 35mm camera. That will allow us to move around without changing the location of the particles. We'll also create a new null object, another one now, which we can use to control how many particles emit and when they emit, and we'll be able to globally control this for all of the particle systems rather than going in and changing all the values individually. So we'll call this emitter. We'll add a slider control to this null object, and like we did before, we'll bring up the controls for the slider. If I create a bit more room here, Alt left click on the particle emission, left click the pick whip tool, drag it to the slider option. The emitter will now control the particles that are emitted. Obviously it's on 0 now, but if we start to change this, we have full control over that. Okay, well, we'll just leave that on something for now, just so we can see them. Now, when we're creating a particle system, it's just handy to see what it looks like when it's moving. So since this locator controls where the particles are emitted, we'll just add a quick expression to this, a quick wiggle expression. So wiggle space, open brackets, and we'll add in the first value, which will control the speed, so 1, comma, space, and we'll add something like 1000, and just close it, close brackets. Okay, now we've done that, we'll play through this. We can see straight away, if I expand this, what is happening. It's self-explanatory. So now we've got that, we can start to play around with the settings. I'm not going to worry about how it looks. All I'm going to think about is how I want them to behave. I mean, to begin with, I'll create the embers. So, well, let's start with the emitter first. Velocity 25. We don't really want them flying out. I mean, we've got the velocity from motion which works quite well. They're adopting the motion from the null object, so that works quite well. Lifetime 1, randomize the life 75, particle type cloudlet, we'll give that a size of 2, randomize the size. We can use this size over life to control how it looks, and we find something like that seems to work pretty well for the size. We can copy this custom curve that we've created and we can paste it into the opacity over life there. Some randomization always helps. As for the color, well, we can choose color over life, and I mean, we're just going for an orange look. It's not really too important, you know, what it looks like, but I suppose maybe a darker orange towards the end will go some way. You know, I'll just increase the size so you can see them a bit better. So this is what we've got so far. So once we're happy with that, which is the blending mode, this will basically affect how the particles themselves interact with each other when they pass over each other. So they use a screen blending mode basically. So I mean, in theory, the more particles that sort of stack up on top of each other will basically use a screen transfer to sort of control how they look. So moving down, physics here will give us even more control. Since they're embers, we'll have them rising. We'll go to the air settings within the physics settings, and you know, to give them a bit more randomization, we'll adjust the spline amplitude. I mean, rather than me trying to describe what it's doing, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's sort of adding some more sort of movement towards them. And let's just look at that and try and figure out what it is that we need to do to them. You know, I'd probably say they're rising too quickly. That's probably a bit too much, if I'm honest. This controls the frequency of the distortions. So maybe if we increase that a bit more, you know, maybe 1 works pretty well. There are no right and wrong settings. It's really just trying to get them to behave in a way that's pleasing. Maybe choose an outwards direction for them. I mean, I wasn't really going to give them much velocity. I didn't really want them to look like they're, you know, exploding out, but maybe that helps a little bit. It's not too bad. Key is to keep working on them, so we'll go to the render tab, render options, motion blur, and we'll choose the type subframe sampling, motion blur on, increase the levels to 15, give it an opacity boost of 5. Shutter angle, we'll just drag that up a bit. This will just increase the motion blur. I'll put the size back down. Maybe that's a little bit too much motion blur, so... Okay. I mean, it's not looking awful. It's not looking terrible. I mean, it's getting there. We'll change this value to 5. This is the fade in spin seconds. I mean, this determines whether the particles are emitted and are instantly influenced by this amplitude, or whether it gradually happens, in this case over half a second, so that will help them to sort of become distorted more quickly. Try a bit of experimentation. I don't really know what the optimum values are. I'm really just going... It's really just guessing, really. I suppose we'd probably want them to not emit so much. Probably have the last a little bit longer. That'll probably help. And what we could do is we could put the speed down and the amount up. Actually, that might be a step in the right direction. Okay, well now I could keep tweaking values all day. At some point I just have to decide that I'm going to be complacent with how they look, because we can always come back later, change them. What I will do though, so we'll just go in here, we'll just turn the speed down a little bit. Okay, one last quick adjustment. We'll just increase the velocity from motion a little bit. Put the velocity... I'm just going to turn the velocity off, I think. That's 0.8. Have a tad velocity maybe. Okay, I will have to leave it there for that. Increase the motion blur just a little bit more. Okay. Well, that's the embers done, so we'll duplicate that, Control D, rename this to fire, rename this to embers. Now, before we start deciding how the fire particles are going to look, we want to set up a custom sprite for the particles. Now, if we select the fire sprite 1, 2, and 3, bring them in here into a 15-second comp, what we're going to do is we're going to start cutting these down. I'm just using Alt and the brackets here to choose the in and out points. I normally sort of go to frame 10, go a frame before it, choose the out point. Go one frame forward. You sort of cut it up like that. The reason we're doing this is because we're going to... The particle system, when it chooses to emit a fire sprite, it's going to choose one out of these 3 sprites at random, which will just help to avoid visible repetition. And to help sell the effect just a little bit, put a turbulent displacement on there, so yeah, we'll give that a 25. Animate the evolution. I'm Alt left clicking on the stopwatch there to bring up the expressions panel here, window. Give it a time, 750. It's just going to add a bit of movement. Possibly too much. I mean, they are single sprites, so another thing you can do is keyframe the offset turbulence here. So if we go here and we move this up, this is just, I mean, you can see what it's doing as I move it up. It's kind of creating the illusion of heat. So, you know, this is going to help give a bit more randomization to them. We will just, to save time, we will just copy this, go to the beginning frame of these sprites. We'll just Control V the effect, and it should just paste in the keyframes in the right place as well, based on where we are on the timeline. Okay, great. So those are our sprites sorted out. So now we take that fire sprite comp, we'll bring it in here, and this is basically going to do the work for us. Don't need it to be visible. We'll go into the particle settings here. We'll go to the particle type, we'll choose sprite. Open the textures panel here, choose the fire sprite comp that we made, go to the time, we'll go split clip, play once, number of clips 3, so it will divide the 15-second clip by 3 and pull in one out of 3 of our 5 clips at random based on this random seed generator here, which is what we want. If we go into the size here, we'll bring that up a bit. Yeah, just so we can see what we're doing, I'm going to turn off the motion blur, just so it's a little bit more obvious. Right, so we should... Let's see now. Looks to me like they're all using the same sprite. Let's go and double check this. Split clip, play once, yep. We're definitely using the fire sprite comp. Yep, let's go back in here, check that all of this is good. Yeah, it looks to be fine. Maybe it's just the randomize. Oh, they are using different particles. It's just that there are so many particles that you can see the repetition. You can see that this one's the same as that one. This is why, if you wanted to avoid this issue, you'd be looking to have sort of 6 to 8 random sprites, basically. But we can disguise that through various techniques and adjustments. So the first thing here, we'll bring the life down to maybe 0.8, randomization to 50. We'll go to the opacity, and yeah, I think something along these lines will work with the opacity over life. I mean, this represents 0.8 seconds, and this represents the value from 0 to 100, basically, represented as a curve. Size over life, I mean, we want them to start smaller and get bigger. I'm trying to draw some sort of logarithmic curve, failing, but we'll use that anyway, we'll smooth it out. Okay. Now, we do not want them to be, the particles to be thrown around as much as they are with this, so let's just bring this down to 100. We've got one. Okay, right. We'll go to the life over time here. We'll bring this down, I think, to 25. Bring this down to 5. We'll go to the rotation, randomize the rotation, maybe even have some rotation, just a tad. I find it's better not to rotate. I mean, if you can see the particles rotating, it will create some problems. But anyway, let's have a look at that. Okay, well, it's looking awful right now, but we are going to fix that. Yeah, we can probably have them last a bit longer, I think. I mean, if we have random particles at the end like that, it's just a case of going into the emitter, bringing that up. Maybe we don't want to do that. Okay, I think that will probably do. Although, I think the size over life, we want them to quickly become small before they fade out. To just help make them a little bit more realistic. You know what, I'm going to draw a completely new curve. I'll have something like this, I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, that aside, it's not perfect, I know, but should be okay for what we're doing. We'll duplicate this one more time, and we'll choose. This will be for the smoke, so we'll choose. Well, first we'll bring the smoke sprite, drag that into our comp, rename this smoke, just smoke. Go to the textures, particle sprite. We'll choose the smoke sprite. We'll change this to start at birth, play once. Then we'll come down here and we'll choose size over life. We want to do something along these lines. It's probably really frustrating to watch me try and draw this. I'll probably do a better job. Opacity, yeah, we want that to fade out, because that's what smoke does, it fades away. Bring the opacity down quite a bit, I think, but bring the size up a lot. We'll bring the life up, make it last a lot longer. Yeah, we'll drag that underneath everything. Yeah, if we're doing the smoke, we might as well just look at the smoke. We don't really want it rising as quickly. And, you know, that goes for the fire as well. We don't... Well, whatever we do, we want the fire to rise a bit more quickly, I think. Let's turn everything on very quickly to see what it's looking like. And we've got the embers. They kind of look like they're shooting off there. Which we really don't want it to look like that. It'll bring that size down quite a bit, I think. And we'll have the fire probably rise up a bit faster, I think. Quickly preview what that looks like. I mean, before I add the adjustments which are going to sell the effect, it's easier to try and get the particles moving in the right way. So what's wrong with that? Maybe we want the embers to be moving a bit faster, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't take the values I'm typing in as gossip or yours. It's probably going to look very different. You might be able to get a better looking result. Okay, right. Well, we'll go with what we've got right now. I will say that this is basically what we're gonna go with. The key now is we're going to add some further distortion, some glow. We're going to try and bring this to life a bit more. Now, I am aware that we're getting on a bit for time, so in anticipation of that, I have made an animation preset which I will talk you through, but it is probably just easier. Pop that on there. Let's just get to a point where we've got, okay. So this is what we've got so far then. Well, I'll talk you through what's happening in this animation preset here. It's just the basic plugins that you get inside After Effects. We've got a turbulent displacement, amount and size 25. We're like we did before with the fire sprite. We've animated the turbulence, the offset turbulence value. This one, we move that upwards. So we've done that with keyframes. We've animated the evolution with a value somewhere between 500 to 750. I think 500 works best. This is creating quite a large distortion. Then we've got a duplicate of that with basically a smaller size, which is just creating some more finer distortions. Then we've added a tint before we add our glows so that we don't overdo the saturation. Now I'll just show you the tint. There you go, amount to tint 45 white basically. So we're going to the glow here. We've got glow threshold 25, glow radius around about 100, intensity 0.5, glow operation, additive, original colors. Now that's what it's going to look like with the first glow. Looks pretty terrible, but it's really having two glows where you start to get that extra intensity. With this one, we've got the glow threshold 25, intensity same as before. We've got a bigger radius here because this creates that sort of smog, sort of outer glow. Then we're doing a curves adjustment here. Now really what we're doing is, if I enable it, I'll show you. We're just basically using a curves adjustment to add some more brightness here. I mean, this, we could get some different kind of looks. If I go into the red channel, we've boosted the red here. We've brought the green down, and we've brought the blue down. So we've basically just color corrected it to be a more sort of red, orangey sort of color. A little bit too much. Not enough sort of saturation. So in the hue and saturation, we're boosting the color. Of course, we can play with this just to decide how much saturation we want it to have, and then I've gone into the red channel and I've just increased the red a little bit. Again, it's just a small adjustment. So that's how that's looking so far. We can improve it further by giving the fire some motion blur. Yep, opacity boost there, some levels, 15. If you find you're getting spaces, dots between the particles, you can just increase the levels, and it's basically just the sampling. Now, if you've been following along, you'll notice you've got some pretty horrific color banding here throughout the gradients and the transitions. I was saving this towards the end because this will significantly slow down your workspace, but if we bring up the project settings here, you can do that by clicking this icon here, and we change the color depth to 16-bit. This will substantially increase the number of colors that the comp can handle, and it's probably difficult to see in the tutorial, but it's smoothed out this gradient here. So this is now a 16-bit image, and it's got a much larger range of colors. If we were to go to 32-bit floating pixels, this is going to mess things up quite a bit, because the glows that we have added, well, we made those adjustments based on what it looked like at 8 bits. So, it would be an entirely different story but 16 just helps to smooth out that colour banding. So if we look through this, and you don't have to have the fire dancing around like that. I mean, we could just go to the locator and, you know, turn off that expression. We can move it around however we want. We could just have it as a stationary fire. Yeah, I'll just let that RAM preview a little bit. So, I mean, I know it's been a bit of a trek to get it to this stage. It is quite a lot of adjusting values. Fire's quite a tricky thing to get it to look right. You know, I would still look to tweaking this a bit, but as far as something that you might put in the background, maybe, you know, it's going to hold up pretty well. Especially if, you know, it's in the background, it's in a moving shot maybe. It's not really going to work in the foreground too well if it's the focus of the shot, but, you know, we could... I mean, this does have an alpha channel, so, you know, you can put it on what you like, and you can go back into the values, and you can have it, you know, you can have it do anything you want, really. I mean, you could, if we want to be crazy, we could change the size of the emitter. We could do some pretty crazy things there. You know, you could create... You could have the particles be a lot bigger. You could have them emitting all over the place. I mean, the more you try and... the more particles you emit, the sort of slower it's going to become. Eventually it's going to become a bit of a slideshow, really, where you're going to lose interactivity, but you know, we have quite a lot of control over this now. If you did want to do something like have a fire that was a bit wider, you could just do this. I mean, you'd obviously have to go to the other settings and make the changes accordingly. Takes a few seconds, but then we could go to the emitter and globally control how many particles are being emitted, and then we could create a wall of fire, you know. And you could add an adjustment layer. I mean, if you were going to do something like this, maybe you could... I wasn't going to show you this, but I thought I might as well. We could go distort, and we could create a mesh warp. And to simplify it, we'll just... This is basically going to warp. So it's putting a mesh over our image, and then we can basically distort it using this. So heat creates a sort of vortex effect. I mean, if we just sort of set this back to a more reasonable amount. If we were to increase the life of the particles, perhaps, so that they were lasting a bit longer, rising a bit higher, we could go into here and we could sort of create this sort of effect where the particles sort of get sucked together like they were in a sort of vortex of heat, and you could sort of manipulate how it looks. I mean, it's going to take quite a while to preview this. Okay, so I've given it some time to cache in. Also, I've just made a few slight tweaks to some of this. I'll show you the mesh warp here. Just tweaked it a little bit more, giving it that sort of kind of vortex shape, sort of trying to emulate what the heat might be doing. And this is what it looks like. So yeah, you can see how if you're prepared to spend a bit more time, maybe sort of making a few finite tweaks. Depends how picky you were. Depends what you needed it to do in the shot, really. I mean, because at the end of the day, we are essentially trying to fake a pretty complex simulation using sort of 2D images, which are just being, distorted in different ways. So it's quite a tricky thing to do, really. But I mean, it's a nice alternative if you don't really have the time to create a complex, fire simulation. This might just be an alternative way. You might think about doing it. If it saves you some time. Anyway, well, yeah. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Do appreciate it. Hope that this was helpful in some way. And yeah. Yes, just remember, filmmaking is what you make of it, I suppose. If to me this is filmmaking, to you it might be something else, but yeah, stay tuned, because we will be doing more tutorials. We will be doing some more stuff with some of the assets that we've got on the channel. Really like to sort of show you what you can do with them, and yeah, look forward to showing you something new next time. Okay, thanks.